Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GDDV 100 Game Theory 1. My name is Kasanas. So, guys, moving forward here, we're doing really well. Right now, we're taking a look at narrative, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into narrative here. This is what we're really focusing on right now, different aspects of narrative. In this particular video, what I'd like to talk to you about is conflict. Conflict is really important when it comes to game. All right, let's get started. So, when we start to talk about conflict, again, conflict is the driving point of your game. Conflict is the driving point of your narrative. And like I've already said, narrative is a really important part of your game, right? Regardless of whether you see it as straight up front and you're playing a narrative style game, or if your narrative is being delivered through environmental storytelling and that kind of thing. This is going to be an important part of exactly what it is you're trying to show. Conflict is. We're going to examine 4 different types of conflict today, and these are particularly narrative conflicts. But again, there are 4 different types. And basically what it is, conflict is basically challenges that stand in the way of the hero achieving a particular goal or objective. That's what it comes down to. And as we already said, that's an extremely important part of narrative. So there's 4 types. I have written here man against man, man against nature, man against self, and man against society. And that is the traditional method of saying this, the academic way of saying this, traditional academic way of saying this. And obviously, it's probably not politically correct. We should be saying person against person, person against nature, person against self, and person against society. It's obviously not in any way a gender-based thing. Any person can be involved in these conflicts, all right? So even though I have man written here, I'm going to say person, and I apologize for using the traditional form of the academia here. When we talk about person versus person, it's an external struggle. There are 2 types of struggles, obviously the internal and external struggle here. 3 of these are external and 1 of them is internal. Person versus person is an external struggle. It's the traditional or the typical good guy versus bad guy, one person standing in my way of getting the things that I want. That's what this one comes down to, all right? And there's lots of different examples of this where, one person is fighting against one other person, that superhero fighting against that super villain kind of thing is your typical person versus person conflict. Person versus nature, again, an external struggle. In this type of narrative, we're talking about person versus nature of some kind, a natural occurrence. So it could be a person who is in the desert and trying to survive on their own urine and eating snakes. Or it could be, someone on a boat who's surviving the big waves as a storm rocks them, that perfect storm. It could be anything like that. And it's not about struggling against another person at all. It's really about the natural forces that are aligned against the person, the hero, from getting what it is that they're ultimately wanting to do, whether it's get home or survive, etc. Person versus self is the only internal conflict that we have in this list of 4. And it's really about an obstacle that is within the character's self, right? It could be a mental disorder of some kind. It could be an emotional or an ethical or a moral fight of some kind that the person, player, or the hero is involved in, something standing in their way of achieving their particular goal, right? So anything like that is a person versus self. It's internal to themselves only. It's they themselves that are standing in the way of achieving a particular goal. And lastly, we have person versus society. An external struggle in which the hero is struggling against a larger society, some type of cultural norm, or they are struggling against the government, or they're struggling against technology of some kind. They have got something like that is standing in their way. It's not about an individual who's standing in their way. It's about a larger organization that is stopping them from achieving their particular goal. So those are the 4 types. And again, each of these could be portrayed very, very differently when it comes to your game. When you're talking about environmental storytelling, understanding that a game where you are struggling against a government that is oppressing its people is going to be portrayed through environmental storytelling or even through dialogue, etc. But if we're just taking a look strictly at if you're kind of against the idea of narrative within your games, even just looking at the environmental storytelling, understanding the context of your game, having a game that displays a rundown, horrible society, Big Brother style society, is definitely a person versus society. Whereas you might show a person versus self, utilizing so some type of mental health issue where you've got a lot of dark passages and dark things as you work yourself through a maze. All of this can be told through environmental storytelling. You can still show these same conflicts and still evoke a particular emotion or feeling within your player through environmental storytelling, even if you're not big on underlying narrative point as well, right? You can still tell all that stuff through your environmental storytelling. Anyway, guys, that's all I want to talk about as far as conflict is concerned. It was a short video, but again, it's really important. That's why I kind of had it on its own. Conflict drives our games. Conflict drives our narratives. Understanding what your underlying conflict is going to go a long way in making sure that you evoke a very particular mood or feeling within your player. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, let me know down below with a thumbs up, or a thumbs down is perfectly fine. These videos are for my students. I hope they are watching them. I'm going to be testing you, so I'll know if you watched them or not. Anyway, guys, thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.